Visited a company a couple weeks ago. Now, they are 20 months old and have a $10 million annual run rate in a plumbing business. The funny thing was, the owner's no plumber. He was a software engineer before he started this company. The last business he helped co-found had built software tools for the trades. And through that work, he learned that 50% of all ongoing home maintenance calls are either for plumbing or HVAC work. And he chose plumbing because he didn't like the seasonality of HVAC. Plumbing was a huge fragmented market that was good year-round. He figured if he could get the model right, it was easy to see how it would scale to other geographies. And so I went to visit and got to sit in on their weekly team meeting. And almost every person in the company was in that room. It was mostly plumbers, and one by one, each of them reported their numbers. And by numbers, I mean they gave a forecast of how much revenue they expected to end the month with. And when they were done, the finance guy walked them through a projected profit and loss statement based on all these individual forecasts. As the finance guy was explaining the high percentage of costs spent on materials for their plumbing jobs, one of the plumbers actually raised his hand and interrupted him. The plumber shared that when they were quoting the job, they didn't have visibility into the assumptions behind the quote. They just put in a job code and it spit out the quote. But that didn't tell them whether the particular job assumed a faucet was going to cost $200 or $400. And that led to a discussion about how the plumbers could get access to the right information so they could make better decisions about the right job codes to use. And it all started with a question from one of the plumbers, not a manager. Just a guy in a uniform with his name on it who after this meeting was going to go get in his truck and head to the next job. And that's when it hit me. This owner had learned something before he even started this business that took me 22 years to figure out. Now, just a couple years ago, I had listened to this podcast that told the story of Les Schwab. If you're not familiar with Les Schwab, he was an entrepreneur who started a tire business in the Northwest that turned into a multi-billion-dollar company. And from the beginning, Schwab built his business in a way that aligned incentives with his team. With each tire store Schwab opened, he shared 50% of each store's profits with the local team that ran it. And the result was this team of people who really cared about their store and helping the overall business succeed. When they won, the business would win, and vice versa. Now, the podcast was inspiring, but apparently not just to me. Because when I was talking with the owner of this plumbing company, he had listened to the same podcast. And it turns out it had inspired him, just like me, to dig into other books and podcasts on employee incentive alignment. In fact, that's how we ended up meeting, because we both worked with the same coach that was trained in the Great Game of Business framework. Like Les Schwab, this plumbing company owner had started his journey with this aligned approach. And it was clearly working because he was already on pace to do more than $10 million a year in revenue for this 20-month-old service business. And he had achieved profitability just shortly after passing his first year. Now, I've been a business owner for 25 years, and I can tell you the hardest part of my job has been dealing with employees. And I never really put together why. I always thought ownership was this lonely journey, either played by yourself or maybe with a partner, where you had to do this dance between getting the business to profitability and keeping your team happy, knowing all your employees want to make more money too, so they can also take care of their families. And it took me forever to see the misalignment and how the root of so much of the struggle I'd had over the years was connected to it. And here I'm looking at this guy who had done it right from the start and was killing it in this new business. This guy who had given his team a stake in the outcome and a reason to care in the weekly context to actually do something about it. Now, I've seen what this can do inside a company that's been around for 2 decades. What I hadn't seen until a few weeks ago was what it looks like when you start that way from the beginning. And I can see this guy is onto something. His business is going to ultimately end up being much larger than mine because he started with the answer I took 22 years to find and also pointed it at a bigger market with no old habits to unlearn. Most owners treat profit sharing and open book management as risks. Or maybe it's something you consider later, maybe if you plateau and you need a new lever. But Les Schwab started that way. This plumbing company owner started that way. And what I saw in that room wasn't a lucky outcome. It was an aligned one. If you're willing to consider sharing both information and a stake in the outcome with your team from the beginning, you may be surprised by what it does, not just to your growth, but to your experience of running a business. Because instead of doing this dance between business success and employee expectations, you can all be rowing together toward profitability. So if you're in the early stages of thinking about starting or buying a business and you find this intriguing, I really recommend checking out the Founders Podcast episode on Les Schwab and Bo Burlingham's book, A Stake in the Outcome. I'll see y'all next week. Cheers.